So our first speaker is Michael Ruffner, who's the Deputy Coordinator and Financial and Programmatic Sustainability at the Office of the Global AIDS Coordinator in the U.S.
All right. So I have 10 minutes to talk effectively about the next 25 years, so have at it. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. The first is really to talk about our policies, but frankly, I find those a little bit boring, and I'd really like to go to what the real challenges are, or how we get to sustainability, and talk about some of those things that we're facing and some of the initial thoughts that we have, and then wrap up with some ideas about long-term financing. Okay. So let's start off at the end. So Wafa's already presented this slide. I don't need to talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. In essence, again, sustainability is really a key part of our strategy. We are hardwiring and embedding it into all of our processes that we do it. And we take this from a systems approach where we have a number of different elements, everything from the legal environment to all the way down to data systems, and we see these as part of a complete whole. And so you can get your cell phone cameras out and take a picture of the URL up there, and that leads you to our sustainability position paper. So those are public facing. The other thing that we do is we have the sustainability index and dashboard. That's really the measurement of progress towards sustainability. And again, the URL up there takes you to all of our sustainability indices and dashboards. I would just simply say the SID really describes the end state, the steady state. We are trying to take a look at both the form as well as the functionality of a system. So it's not just good enough that you have a law that bans discrimination if half of your county's sheriffs don't want to go along with that. So again, it's much more of a focused on how the systems operate, and that's really the difficulty. And the other thing is that we really do take a systems approach. I want to emphasize that the SID is not decisional. It does not dictate an investment. So in any event, if there is a red, that doesn't necessarily mean it's PEPFAR's duty to address that. And even if there's something green, does not mean that we should be stopping our investment. This is really just a piece to have the conversation and to look at, tease out indications of progress. I think the other thing is that we do this SID every 2 years now, and what we can say is that focused effort clearly is having a demonstrable result. And I'm sure that you all saw Chris Hart's posters out in the poster exhibits, but this is just one of the slides there to show how that movement has happened over time. And again, it's a little bit of an indication that we really have been able to embed the sustainability into our processes, strategies, and budgets. Okay. As I said, I don't find that as interesting. It's because it's really the sustainability is not an on or off thing. It's really a journey to something. And because of that, the PEPFAR program is confronting a number of challenges. And really what I'd like to do is crowdsource, getting people to think about how we move to that functional system. And so what I'm presenting here are really initial thoughts, and in some cases truly literally drawing board thoughts about how to address this. The first point, though, we have to make is epidemic control is essential to a sustainability. It's an absolute precondition. You cannot have a sustainable response if infections are continually rising. So that really situates that we have a very data-driven and target-focused program that is getting us to epidemic control, as well as a lot of other of our systems investments. Okay, so the first issue that we've confronted is, we have an annual budget. And a lot of that budget talk is around those day-to-day, year-to-year goals around treatment, around how many children we have served, those types of things. And so we needed a way to kind of level the playing field a little bit. And so we developed what we call the Table 6 process. Now, Table 6 is an anachronism. Table 6 was the original Strategic Direction Summary, SDS, and it's now morphed into Appendix 6, and next year it could be something else, or Appendix C, excuse me, and it could be something else. But everybody knows about it internally as Table 6. And evidently that's a little more interesting than Appendix C is. But really what it is we do know that sustainability takes multiple years to get to. And we have this measurement of where we want to be. But the Table 6 is that way to bring things in, to really talk about what is the outcome and chart progress on an annual basis towards first an interim outcome and then ultimately our final outcome. I think the biggest challenge that we have right now is understanding what is good enough in a systems investment, right? We could spend forever trying to reach the impossible perfection. So we have to come to an understanding, a vision, if you will, of what is good enough, and when we can turn off, because these are ultimately investments. Investments have time frames and they have a payoff, and this is the thing that really vexes us, because we can measure a lot of things, but a lot of things that are really essential to that functionality can't be measured. And this is just a quick example. Again, I don't know if you can see it. You will be able to see this in the Appendix C of our strategic direction summary. I encourage you all to look there. But this is really trying to look at what are the key barriers that we face, what is that initial expected outcome or goal, and then some benchmarks and measurement over the next couple of years. Again, there are a number of systems things that can be solved within a couple of years. There are other things that we're going to have to invest in for a long time. So this is just a short intermediate snapshot of how to do it. And again, I encourage you to look on our website for all of our Appendix C's, Table 6s, if you will. Okay, the other thing is that clearly a low-cost system is going to be more apt to be a sustainable system. And so a lot of what we're doing right now is not only to strengthen the system, but to drive down the cost. And the first place that we have to do that is driving down our PEPFAR costs to get to that. But it's also something that will be more likely to be handed over in the future. Our real problem, though, is we know where we spend, but we don't actually know what we do very well. We need better information on that. The second part of that problem is we don't know what they should actually cost. We know what we pay for that particular service, but we don't know what it should actually cost. And then the ultimate problem is what activities are actually correlated with an outcome. So we do lots of things. We do things in packages that we have to really tease out what's essential. And so there are a number of things that we do that we're doing within OGAC to try to improve upon that. So we're going to be implementing some initial activity-based costing systems, really to get to that point of what things should cost. We're looking at all of the work plans, the actual work plans, and assuring that they are what our strategy, that they are faithful to the strategy. And we're also going to be evolving how our monitoring of expenditures. And so again, let's just drill down on that. So right now, and I think this is our problem, we spit out, and you saw this in the graph on where it is, that we spend money in care and treatment. And I think what a lot of people hear is that these are all of the direct services that absolutely have to be picked up. But when you look back at what's in those package of services, the bulk of the spending is actually in above service delivery things. These are not things that are actually. So I think it's a real question about understanding what it is that we actually do and what has to be handed off. There's a lot of work that's going on with ADE and the Global Fund around trying to align our resources better. Nobody in their right mind would put together a system of funding that exists, but we have to do better, and one of the things is we're doing here, and we're doing this in conjunction with Global Fund and UNAIDS. And we hope within a year or two we're going to have a lot more interesting data. The other thing is that we take those numbers up there and we take domestic resources and we put a dollar value to that. And I think that does two things. First, it really underestimates what the government's actually doing. And it also really underestimates the importance of that. Because in the end, we are using government systems. They're government clinics for the most part. They're government personnel. And we're just kind of layering on top of that. The other thing that I was asked to talk a little bit about was our move now to indigenous partners. This is brand new for this upcoming COP cycles, that we're going to be moving over time by FY 2020, that 70% of our funding has to go to indigenous partners. Again, that has a money aspect to it, but it also has a sustainability aspect to it as we're building up our things. So just a couple of quick looks into the future. I think the point is that PEPFAR funding is going to change as we understand more about what we spend. We will be changing the mix of our spending. But we do know that commodities will be going up. It is the one true marginal cost of putting somebody on treatment. But we also know that we have program goals in circumcision that we will meet and will free up resources. As we hit epidemic control, the way we do testing will change. And a lot of those health systems strengthening investments will come to fruition. And so again, because we don't really know what we do relates to the outcome, how we unwind that is very important. And I liken that to Jenga. We have to be very careful. So we can pull things out that aren't structurally important, but we also don't want to risk that end state where the tower collapse. So just two final slides. So the good news is that economic growth will solve all health financing problems. The bad news is it's going to take a long time. And the real problem for a lot of our countries is that first step from low income to low to middle incomes has a lot of implications for other people's development assistance. So as we're doing this transition, it's going to hit during that time. And I think the final point that I'll make is that we need to make sure that we've talked a lot about epidemic control. Epidemic control does not mean that we're leaving. We know that we still have a lot of systems investments that will have to mature. We know that there are any number of different things that will have to continue on in spending. And so, as I said, the U.S. government has spent $80 billion on HIV. We continue to spend $6 billion a year, and we're going to absolutely defend that investment to ensure that we get to that sustainable response.